than I do.
It is possible. And Becky, to answer your question, yes, I'm going to record this so that we can
Cool.
embed it on the website. Just trying to close some stuff out because Zoom makes my computer go hinky every once in a while. Yeah, right. Let me see. Here, let me go. Where is? Yeah, we go.
If you guys get a lot of background noise on my end, please let me know and I can mute between talking.
No, I'm fine. I don't hear anything.
Okay, cool.
I don't either. All I hear is Gus watching the news in there. Okay. So did Becky tell you how I decided that this was the book that we were gonna read?
No, I don't think so.
I was Books A Million, and you know how like they have like the bargain price books and everything, and yours was there, and I like looked at the cover and I was like, yep, I want that one, and then they had 2 copies. So yep, Angie and Becky's book club was born.
Yep.
Okay. Well,
So-
I like Books A Million, so that's good.
Yeah, I moved from West Virginia to South Carolina in late October. And the second week I was down here, and so the move put me just like a couple hours away from Angie's. So we found a coffee shop in the middle. And I think the second Saturday that I was here, we met up for coffee and she's like, here, you have to read this book. I'm like, well, that's cool because I love this author. And
Okay.
I don't know if I actually met you at BoucherCon in 2015.
Oh,
So,
really? Okay.
Yeah, you were on a panel and I just did like a flyby. Oh, hi, I love your books.
2015 was where? Raleigh?
Raleigh, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, good.
So yeah. So then I don't know if you saw the text messages on the page where we kept like tormenting each other, like, I'm on chapter 30. Well, I'm on chapter 51. And oh my gosh, you have to get to this part. And,
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
and then there was one part where I was like, okay, when you get to this part, just cancel your plans because you're going to want to read the end all the way through.
Okay.
Mhm.
Well,
And I
good.
did. I did.
That's what friends are for.
Yeah.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right.
Yep.
So I'm happy to talk about anything about the book that I can remember, yeah, or writing or whatever. So yeah, wherever the conversation goes.
That's awesome.
Alrighty. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I have to tell you, I got a quarter of the way through the book and immediately went to Amazon, and all of your books are now on my to be read list.
Oh, good. That's why that Brinks truck backed up to my house the other day because you ordered all the books,
Yes.
and I got rich suddenly.
So I know a lot of your books have to do with missing people. And I know you posted on your Facebook page before links to like stories of like unsolved mysteries about missing people and things like that. And that is like a topic that like I am fascinated with. I listened, Angie introduced me to the Crime Junkie podcast because we both love the ID channel, and we
Mhm.
joke about like, bodies being buried in the backyard and stuff. So like, that's just a like morbid fascination that I have too with missing people. So this one, the missing person was a little different because you knew who it was the whole time. And there was a lot of speculation about who had her.
Right.
Becky, I think you froze.
The grandmother have her. Did Jake Little really have her, that kind of thing.
You froze for a minute, so we missed a little bit of what you were saying.
Right? Just like, the whole time Felicity, the daughter, the whole time that she was missing, it was instead of starting out with the missing person, we kind of got to to know her a little bit through Erica. And then,
Yeah.
and then when she said, you know, that she was missing. And then it was like, for me, as I read through, I was like, so sure that, you know, Erica had like scrolled her away somewhere and knew where she was. And I was like, well, maybe Jake Little has her. Well, maybe her grandmother has her, you know.
That's what I was thinking. I was like it. I like this book because yeah, we knew who the missing person was, but there were there were multiple what I call subplots, sub mystery plots woven
Yeah.
throughout the book that like I didn't know who had her, where she was until I got to like the end of the story. So it definitely I like a book that can hold my attention like that. Like
Mhm.
I just, no, I don't want to watch TV. Oh, I'm gonna eat. Really? I didn't even know you made dinner. That type stuff because I'm so into the book.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's the goal, is that the reader will suspect everybody at some time, right? And as long as possible, have the reader not know what really happened. And then I hope that when you do find out what really is going on, that it's enough of a surprise, right? And I mean, readers are really sophisticated readers who read a lot of mysteries and things like that. So they've seen all the tricks. So I don't know, you can't fool them all the time. Sometimes people know what's going on or have a guess. But so anyway, so that's the goal, is to try to keep the reader off balance as long as possible until it all comes together. And even if you think you know, and even if you guess right, maybe you're not sure that you guessed right. So yeah.
So I know Becky said that you do a lot of like unsolved mystery, missing person. Like, why is that what you tend to focus on? Like, what's the story behind the story? I guess, as far as like,
Yeah, there's really not any real reason except that I've just always been interested in those kinds of weird crime cases and missing persons cases. I think missing persons cases are really disturbing because of how much you don't know. I mean, if there's a murder or a crime committed, usually you pretty quickly know what's happened. Like they find a body and they figure out, oh, it's the spouse who did it or whatever. And it's horrible, obviously, if someone is murdered, but at least you usually
Yeah.
know, and there's like a sense of closure, and like, here's the person, and here we can have a funeral and whatever. But missing persons cases are really weird because they're so open-ended. And if you go online and if you go down the rabbit hole of looking at missing persons cases online, you see these missing person cases that have been going on for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, parents who are 70, 80 years old and they've never found out what happened to their child, or, something like that, or a child whose parent disappeared and they never find out what happened. And I just think that's particularly disturbing, because it's so open-ended, because you can imagine that anything happened. Oh, maybe they're still alive. Maybe they ran away. Maybe they're perfectly fine and they just don't want to have contact with me anymore, right? In Somebody's Daughter, it's a little different because it's a kid. So usually the kid is young enough that she probably didn't like run away and start life. Like teenagers run away, and sometimes that's what happens. But in Somebody's Daughter, the kid is young enough that it's probably not that. But there's still just the wondering, like, what happened? Is she okay? Is she hurt?
Yeah.
Is it a crazy person who has her? Whatever.
Yeah, because you mentioned the guy in the truck. I'm like, who's the guy in the truck? Was that Jake Little? Does Jake Little have her? I was like so sure it was Jake Little.
Yeah.
Spoiler. Maybe it was.
Maybe it is him. Maybe there's like a choose your own adventure version, and he's the person in another version.
That would be cool. The choose your own adventure part. So
yeah, sounds complicated. Yeah.
Becky, did you freeze again?
Yeah, a little bit.
Isn't it
Freezing.
supposed to be?
It's like 4 seconds at a time,
Isn't it supposed to be warm in South Carolina? Why do you keep freezing down there?
right? So,
Yes, yes.
yeah, I think I brought a little winter weather with me when I came down.
Yeah, you could have left it behind. I'm just saying. Just saying. If we get snow though, you're getting kicked out
another-
of South Carolina.
Okay. So another thing that got me was the relationships, like with Gail, the mother-in-law.
Yeah.
She was a piece of work. She made me like my mother-in-law more, and I already liked my mother-in-law a lot. So super thankful to have a good mother-in-law.
Why do you think she was such an awful mother-in-law?
Yeah, because she's like keeping this secret from like
Oh,
her
that.
son.
I don't think she
and
was
his
necessarily
new
an awful
wife, you know.
mother-in-law. She was an awful mother by keeping
Yeah.
the secret of the child.
Yeah.
And like I can understand it
I
to
was-
a point because it's been so many years that and she didn't seem to like Erica from the beginning. You know what I'm saying? Like when he was
Yeah. But then
so
yeah, then when she found out about the grandchild, she was like, "Oh, look, it's our chance to have Robin, the dead sister, all over again." And
yeah.
Well, I mean, my goal is that nobody is perfect
Mhm.
and nobody is completely evil. And so, I mean, with Gail, she was kind of in this weird position where Erica might have been lying about the child, is one thing, right? So she wanted to tread lightly on that secret. She didn't want to disrupt her son's current marriage by
Mhm.
just saying like, "Hey, you might have a kid," blah blah blah.
Yeah.
She still, as a mother, she had lost a child herself when she was young and and when she was younger and didn't have any grandchildren, so like that, so I was trying to make her
Yeah.
motivations complicated in that way. So anyway, yeah, I was just hoping that it came across that she, it wasn't an easy decision for her to make. If someone comes to you and is like, "Hey, this child is really your son's child," and she's kind of like, "I don't know, you're a little flaky, Erica. I don't know if I believe what you're telling me," right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
So anyway,
I was gonna say I understood her motivation behind it, of why she didn't just rush straight out to tell her son. So I mean I understood that, but there came a point in time where I started to not like her some because she was keeping all of these secrets, or
Yeah.
the secret of, oh, I already knew about this. And I mean, I don't know. Like I said, I understood the motivations behind it, but it got to a point where I almost started to like her just a little bit less,
Yeah.
because I was like, you need to tell him, and the fact that she never told him, and that was how he found out, was, Erica showing up at his front door,
Right.
So, but like I said, I mean, I get the motivation behind it, because she was definitely a multi-layer character. So,
Yeah. I kind of feel like if it wasn't for Jake Little, like, Gail, the mother, she would never have said anything.
oh no, she wouldn't have.
She'd been like, "Oh, yay, you found your daughter. Shh, don't tell her you know me."
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's, she was a person who had had a lot of loss in her life because she'd lost a
Mhm.
child when she was young, and her husband had died. And so she was kind of trying to make these decisions on her own. I think it's hard to make those decisions unless you have someone you can confide in, right? And yeah, you're right. She was never that crazy about Erica anyway. But the whole like grandchild thing now maybe being a possibility complicated stuff for her. So yeah,
Yeah.
I like my mother-in-law. So
Yeah. Yeah, I really like my mother-in-law and my mom. I like them both. We've had our ups and downs over the years, because I've known my mother-in-law about half as long as I've known my mother. So
The longer you go on, I've known my mother-in-law more than half my life now.
Yeah.
Right? So yeah. No, I mean, I like my mom too. She was willing to give birth to me, so I can't really,
Yeah, she did you real solid.
Yes, she did. And if you'd seen my dad, wow, really, I kid, but
So, like, I know when I'm writing, there's certain topics I have to stay away from. Like, I can't, and like when I'm watching the ID channel or like when I'm listening to Crime Junkie, I have to read through the preview first. If it's anything having to do with small children or young boys, because I have 2 sons, and even though they're like, they're almost 23 and 24 now, and they know everything and can do whatever they want,
sure.
Even though they still live at home, so but they, yeah. So, but like I have to shy away from certain topics. Are there any topics you have to shy away from when you're writing? Like, are there any triggers that you just can't put in your books because it's just too much on your, your psyche, your emotions, whatever?
No, I can't. I don't have children, so I can hurt children in a book anytime I want, right? No, I'm afraid of needles. So like if I wouldn't, I wouldn't have a scene of someone getting a shot or giving blood because that would, make me pass out. No, I don't think so. I mean, it's possible that just like anything that that is particularly disturbing to me, I just don't even think about writing about. I don't know. But I can't think of really any issue. The more books that I write, the fewer, like, you don't want to repeat yourself. So I'm running out of things to write about. So I really can't have anything off limits. I have to be willing to go after anything just so I can write a story. So I don't think of anything like that. Like I said, I don't have kids. So I know some people who have kids have that issue of like, they don't want to see a child in danger or a child being harmed. And I understand that completely. And I know people who are married and they're like, oh, it's difficult to see a story about someone losing a spouse or whatever, I mean, so everybody has some of those things, I think that they want to stay away from. But also, I mean, I kind of think books are designed, maybe especially thrillers, they're kind of designed to make you feel uncomfortable. They're like roller coasters. So you're supposed to feel uncomfortable and then you're supposed to say at the end, it's over and it's okay. Yeah. And then you go back to your life and, you hope that your loved ones are okay and the people only got hurt in the book.
Yeah. So you also use social media in this, where like Angela goes poking around Michael's computer and she finds the picture that Erica posted, an old wedding picture. And she's like, why would she post this like last week?
Right.
And they've been done forever. So, I mean, do you ever get inspiration from real life from that? From like using, like you see or hear something, like you either see something on social media or you hear about it happening and you're like, ooh, I could use that in a book.
I don't know if there's ever been anything on social media. I just think that social media is such a part of most people's lives that it would be hard to not include it in a book that's set today, right? That most people have some social media account or they have a phone and they're texting people or whatever. And if you were trying to find out what your spouse was up to, you would look at their phone or their social media accounts. It's like, back in the old days, I don't know what you would look at. You would have to like see if your husband came home with lipstick on his collar or whatever, like I don't, but now you've got these things that leave this track record, right?
Yeah.
Leave this trail, this electronic trail wherever somebody goes. And the other weird thing about social media, like in the book with Erica posting the picture of the wedding, is that someone else can do something like post this picture and you can kind of be an innocent bystander to it. Like, well, I didn't ask her to post this picture from 10 years ago, right? If your ex is like, I'm going to start putting pictures up and you're like, I didn't ask you to do that, right? or some old friend of yours is like, hey, I found a box of pictures from high school. I'm starting to scan. And you're like, please don't. I don't want to see it.
Don't want to relive it.
So you can kind of be an innocent bystander that way, in a way that you couldn't before social media,
Yeah.
because if you had the box of pictures 20 years ago, what could you do with it? No one could,
Yeah.
so it makes things complicated.
It does.
Yeah,
So
and I
is-
think it's easier to impersonate someone else on social media. So there's that question of, was it really Erica? Did she get hacked?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can always use the old, when famous people get caught
I was
tweeting
hacked.
something, they're like, oh, I was hacked. I was hacked. It wasn't me. Yeah, there's that issue too. I mean, I also think, so like I've been married for 22 years. So my marriage predates social media and all that. But I think about people now who date one person and then there are all these pictures of them and then like you date and it's like the pictures of you dating the other person are still there. It's just, it's so weird. Like I didn't have to live through that, but it's weird to think of people doing that. Like you can go back and say like, oh, 10 years ago, you were on a trip with Sally and now you're engaged to Jane, and it's kind of weird, but I'm just so glad I didn't have to deal with any of that.
So is there any genre that you haven't written that you would like to, or is it just strictly you want to stay with the psychological thrillers?
Yeah, I'm one of those, I like to read everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so, or at least a lot of different things. And so anytime I read a book that I really like that's in a different genre, I always think like, oh, it would be cool to do that. Like if I read, a historical novel or a science fiction novel, I think like, oh, wow, it would be really cool to do that. But it's really hard to write in a different genre and to start doing it, because genres have their own conventions. And like, if you're going to write historical fiction, you kind of have to like know stuff about a time period, right? So it's tempting to think about that, but that would be a lot of effort, and it's hard enough just doing what I'm doing already,
I know your wife is also a writer, right?
Yes.
And so
And
what's that?
She's not home right now, so I can say whatever I want to about it.
Just
She
make
might
sure
be
she doesn't
walking
look
at
at the
any moment,
website.
so I have to be careful.
Just make sure she doesn't see the website.
Yeah.
So how is that? Do you guys do a lot of like bouncing ideas off? Because I know like my husband's not a writer. He will never be a writer. I love him dearly, but he just won't ever be a writer. But I love bouncing ideas off him, because we do a lot of like watching the ID channel and stuff like that. And like, there's like a saying, when angels are near, cardinals appear. Well, we have like a dozen cardinals in the backyard every day. And I'm like, oh, it's because of all the bodies, all the bodies buried here. And he's like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
So, and we have like a pond in the front yard, and we joke that would be a good place to hide a body, And so, but I know, right? So if anyone goes missing, I swear it wasn't me. But if, do you guys do a lot of bouncing ideas off each other? Is there any kind of competition there?
We do try out ideas all the time. That's one of the benefits of having another writer in the house, is that we discuss story ideas and would this be a good story, or would that be a good story? Or if we watch a movie or a TV show or something, we say like, well, it would have been better if they'd had, this happened in the plot or whatever. So we do that a lot. There's not really competition. We write different things. So really it's a benefit. I mean, the drawback is neither one of us have job security as writers. That's the problem. I always tell my students, go marry somebody who's like an engineer or works in the business school. But other than that, yeah, I mean, we definitely share ideas with each other, and that's very helpful.
Have you ever thought about collaborating?
Yeah, that would be, we've never really talked about it. I don't know. It would end up being a murder mystery because one of us would probably be dead if we tried to do that. I don't know. I don't know what that would be like. I've never collaborated with anybody on something like that. I mean, you hear about people co-writing, and I don't know. I always wonder what that's like when people co-write and how that works. So we've never done that. I don't think there are any plans to. We're just trying to survive being cooped up in the house for the last 9.5 months together. So
Yeah.
Right?
yeah.
I've had my escape. My husband works outside of the house, so we're not together 24. We're not together 24/7, even with COVID out there. So yeah,
Okay.
thankfully.
That's
My
why you're
husband-
still alive.
Yeah, my husband's retired, and both kids, their logic is that they're not going to find jobs until we've moved all our stuff down, because they don't want to get a job and then have to ask for a week off.
Oh, okay.
So,
And that makes
yeah,
sense.
it does. So, and they are really helpful. So they walk, they walk the dogs and stuff, so I can write.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can so that you can keep churning out your books and getting
Yes. Yeah.
making the
So,
money.
speaking of books, do you have any books that are connected? Like, do your characters ever, like, will we ever see the characters from somebody's daughter in in another book? Like maybe Passing on the Street, or maybe someone needs to hire Michael for something, or somebody's kid goes to school with Felicity, or any little Easter eggs like that in your books?
I don't usually do that. I mean, no, I really don't do that. Usually because I just, they're all standalone, so they exist independently of each other. And I try to create new places each time. So yeah, I don't really do that. Usually it's because like it would just require me to I'd have to remember some obscure detail from one book and put it in another book. I mean, sometimes I think about, I'm nowhere close to doing this, but sometimes I think about previous books and I think like, well, what are those people doing? Could you ever write a sequel to one of those? Like, could Michael have another kitty that he doesn't know about that shows up on his doorstep, right? Yeah, but I don't know. I've never gone very far with that. I kind of like writing the standalones just because you can start over completely each time, can create the town, create the people, and then the readers can just jump in anytime.
Yeah. And you don't have readers leaving you reviews like, his eyes were brown, you made them blue in this book. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I could be like George R.R. Martin and hire someone just to keep track of all those.
Yeah.
things. Yeah.
If we could all do that.
Yeah.
So
You just need HBO to make your book into a
there you go.
series. You'll be set. That's all you need.
Yeah. So I know like George R.R. Martin, he has like a whole team, we're like, I'm lucky to have like an editor and a proofreader and cover designer. So, and because I'm published through, Angie and I both work for Sweet Promise Press, and that's who most of my books are published through. But what is do you have like a team, or you just send it off to your publisher and they do the rest? And like, do you have like an editor, and do you like have an editor who goes through it before you send it off, or?
Well, my wife reads it, and she's a very good proofreader, and so she'll read it, and my agent will read it before it goes to my editor. So a couple people read it. If I'm really worried about it or have a question, I have had other people read things, but usually I'm just like so up against the deadline that I don't even have time to like find 5 people to read the book as well. So yeah, then when it goes to my editor, she reads it. And we do a few rounds of revisions depending on how much stuff needs to be done. And they have copy editors and all that. And then
Yeah.
like, all the people at Berkeley has a whole, I mean, I have a team
Yeah.
of people at Berkeley who do all the stuff, the publicity, the marketing. And I have a publicist who does a lot of social media stuff, blah, blah, blah. So yeah,
Awesome.
there are a lot of people. I mean, I thought I became a writer because I like to work alone. And then you find out that you still have to work with a bunch of people, which is great because like I couldn't do any of that stuff on my own. I can't design a cover, and I'm not like a super detailed copy editor and all those things. So I need all those people to help me because I would be lost and directionless if I was trying to do all those jobs.
Yeah, it definitely takes a village.
Yeah.
So when you're not teaching and you're not writing, what do you do? I mean, do you read a lot? Do you, I know you said you read a lot of different genres and stuff, but other than that, like, what do you do to decompress from life?
We watch a lot of movies and TV. When before the end time started, before the pandemic started,
Right.
we always loved to go out to a movie. That was just our thing to do, was just going out to a movie every weekend and seeing all kinds of stuff. Now, of course, you can't do that, but we've been watching movies at home, obviously. I mean, like, imagine if this pandemic had happened before Netflix.
Oh,
What
Lord.
on earth would we all be doing, right?
There would be
it
a
would be-
whole lot more spouses that were
Yes.
no longer with us.
We would be doing bunny shadows on the wall for each other. So yeah, so we watch a lot of movies and TV shows. I take a walk every day. We live, speaking of like morbid things and missing people, we live very close to a cemetery. So I take a walk in the cemetery every day. Just to remind myself that I'm still alive and all those people aren't. I mean, that's kind of it. My in-laws moved to town about 6 months ago. So I've been watching a lot of football with my father-in-law. We're in a bubble with my in-laws, so the four of us see each other without me. We don't live in the same house, fortunately. But, so yeah, so like I've been, hanging out with the in-laws. That's about what passes for excitement around here these days. Yeah.
Have you developed any new hobbies because of the pandemic? Like, I know a lot of people were baking bread. I did not bake bread.
No, I did not.
Oh, no. The last thing I would do is cook or bake. I would eat, but I wouldn't cook or bake if I had to do that. No, I don't think I've really developed any hobbies like that. I don't know. I'm not much of a hobby guy, I mean, I'm teaching full time. I taught online in the fall semester, and I'm teaching online again in the spring semester. So once the semester starts, that takes a fair amount of time, and it's very weird to teach online and not get to know the students and see the students face to face. Is very strange, but alas, they're little germ factories, so I don't want them around me.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
Yeah.
So what do you teach, if you don't mind us asking?
Yeah, I teach creative writing at Western Kentucky University. So normally I'm teaching, either an advanced or an intermediate fiction writing class, or a beginning fiction or beginning creative writing class, an introduction to literature, and we have an MFA program. So this spring I'm directing a couple theses for students. So yeah, it's good. I mean, I really do like teaching. I really don't like it as much when it's online. But like I said, my in-laws moved here and they're in their late 70s. So I can't bring anything home to them or to my wife to them. And I haven't seen my mom in a long time, but she's quite ancient. And so like, if I wanted to see her, I can't like spread disease around. So
Yeah.
that's why I'm
Yeah.
teaching online. Yeah.
Yeah, my in-laws are older and we left them back in Northern Virginia, so they're not very technologically savvy. So we've been using, luckily the post office is like 2 or 3 blocks away, so we'll put together cards and letters and pictures and postcards and send them like a couple times a week. And she's loving that. She's loving all the snail mail. Something I thought I would never do again.
Right?
Yeah, my mom has never been on the internet or had a smart, like none of that. Like we're lucky to get her to work the cordless phone. So it's just calling on the phone but trying to keep her safe too, and keep everybody safe. So nothing you can do.
Who are some of your favorite authors?
Yeah, I'm always reluctant to mention, authors I know, because I'm always afraid I'll forget somebody and then they'll be offended.
Besides your wife, of course.
Besides her. I'm trying to think of really good. Are you talking about like just suspense writers?
Who are you reading lately?
I really think there are a lot of great suspense writers. J.T. Ellison. I love J.T. Ellison as a writer and as a person. Rhea Fry. Have you read Rhea Fry?
I haven't.
Oh, well, you should look her up. She has 3 books out. They're both Nashvillians. Nashville's an hour away from here. So we're practically next door neighbors. Wendy Walker is great. Liv Constantine is great. Samantha Downing. Have you read Samantha Downing yet?
I have not.
My Lovely Wife, and He Started It. Her books are very crazy and fun. Jessica Strawser and Catherine McKenzie. Lots of very good writers. And then there are just like big, like Stephen King is always going to be somebody I'll read. I just think he's amazing. And he's one of those people who I've read so many of his books that I'm starting to get like, oh, I need to slow down because, there might be like a finite number of his books someday. But no, Stephen King is amazing. So I love reading Stephen King and people like that. So yeah, I think that there are so many great writers out there right now in all genres that, it's a good thing there's a pandemic. We can all get caught up on our reading. Yeah.
Do you read Stephen King's son's books?
I've read the first one, which was Heart-Shaped Box. I read that one, and I've read some of his short stories, and I have a couple of his other books. So yeah, I really like him. I think he's good too, especially the short stories I like. I liked Heart-Shaped Box. That was really good. I haven't read The Fireman. I think somebody recommended that to me and said that was really good. I met Stephen King at a basketball game when I was in college. That's my claim to fame.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. When I was a senior in college, the school I went to the Final Four, and Stephen King. And so I was in the student section. So we had really good seats. And then Stephen King was sitting like 15 rows behind me.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
And I went up and he was there with his wife, and I introduced myself. I was like, hi, Mr. King, I just wanted to, and they acted shocked that I recognized them. They were like, I was thinking like, dude, you're the most famous writer in the world.
Right.
Of course I recognize you're Stephen King. Like, isn't everybody coming up and talking to you? Anyway, that's my brush with greatness right there.
Very cool.
So is like mystery and suspense your go-to for like what a movie that you want to see or books that you pick up? Do you find that you tend to lean more towards the suspense and the mystery?
I go through phases. Sometimes I read a lot of mystery and suspense. Sometimes I feel like I I want to break from it because, I'm trying to write it, and like most of the writers I know are writing it, and it's just kind of like enough with the mystery and suspense. But I mean, I'll always love reading those kinds of books. But I'll read anything. I'll read like historical fiction. I like horror. I like Westerns. I like sci-fi, fantasy. I'll read just about any one of those genres. And then like movies and TV, we have watched some, like the true crime stuff and listen to podcasts, but I'll also, watch other stuff. Like we just watched Bridgerton. I don't know if you guys have watched that yet.
It's on my list.
Okay. Like that's totally 180 degrees different from what I read or mystery and crime. But it was great. We loved watching it. So anything that's decent and entertaining, I'm happy to check out. If somebody's telling a good story, I'm happy to read, because I think you can learn something from anybody who's telling a good story, and there's always something to learn or enjoy.
Do you worry about accidentally pulling too much of a style or plot from a book that you've read or a movie that you've watched? Like, I know some authors, they're like, oh, I got to make sure, I can't do this because such and such is doing this. Like, is that ever a concern that you're going to go, did I actually just think that up, or did I read it somewhere?
Yeah, I think you have to be a little conscious of that. But I mean, for one reason, that's a good reason to have other people read your work, especially, like people who are really like my editor and my agent. My editor edits a ton of suspense novels and reads a ton of suspense novels, and my agent's read everything. So that's a good reason to have an agent, an editor, people like that who can read it and say like, oh, so-and-so did this in a book 5 years ago or whatever. But I also just think like in mystery and thriller, especially, there are only so many, like, someone's going to die, something awful's going to happen. And there are only so many reasons people kill people or kidnap people. It's usually just like money or love, and like that's kind of it. So there aren't many ways to totally reinvent the wheel. I mean, I think people reinvent the wheel by trying to tell stories in a different way, like unreliable narrators and telling the story out of order and things like that. But I mean, like, how many different ways are there to kill a person? I mean, like, how many different reasons do people kill people? And, so yeah, I mean, I think all writers have to be conscious of that, but, there's only, like there are only so many ways to tell the story. And
yeah. And I think that like suspense and especially like thriller, they have a little more leeway with how they kill people as opposed to like cozy mystery.
Oh yeah, cozy, it has to be very like, you have to gently kill the person.
Yeah.
Like hit them over the head with a library book or something like that. Mystery, I mean, mystery and like suspense and thriller and all the, like it runs the gamut. Like my books really aren't that graphic or bloody or anything like that. That's just my thing. But you can pick up suspense novels and thrillers that have, graphic murders and serial killers and bodies being dismembered and things like that. And so, I mean, that's what's good about the genre, is that you can run the gamut. You can read a cozy and like it's, or you can go read something where, a serial killer is dismembering people and everything in between.
Yeah. Have your books ever been optioned for movies?
I've never had an option. I've had like interest, I've had like whatever, like I've had almost every book people call and people, the thing I had to learn is that people get, like when my first book came out and like immediately there were like producers calling and like, and I was like, that's it, I'm going to be rich. They're going to be like, And then my agent was like, slow down, Sparky, this happened, and then like they just kind of disappear. And that's usually what happens with the movie people, is like they get really excited for a while and then it just kind of fades away. So yeah, I mean, I've had like, you know, like famous people whose names you recognize, you know, interested and talking and this and that. And, but then like, it's all of a sudden like, oh, you know, he decided to go to Hawaii instead this summer. So, you know, and it's like, it's just like, oh, okay, sorry. It's
Yeah.
all over with. So yeah. Maybe
So
someday.
long.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's your favorite way to read? Like paperbacks, ebooks, hardbacks, audiobooks, little of everything?
Well, I almost never read ebooks. I almost never read electronically just because I stare at a computer screen all day, like all of us. I stare at a screen all day. So at night when I want to read, I really don't want to look at a screen anymore because I get tired of that.
Yeah.
And audiobooks, I like audiobooks. We used to do audiobooks when we went on long car trips, which we don't do anymore. But that was the thing, like if we went on a long car trip, we'd get an audiobook and listen to it for a long time, get an unabridged audiobook and just, go for it. So yeah, really, no, I like reading real books. Doesn't matter really to me that much if it's hardcover or paperback. I mean, I don't really, like if I've made the mistake of buying, like I recently read, a few months ago, I read Shogun, the James Clavell famous book, which I hadn't read ever. I've seen the miniseries when I was a little kid, but I had a hardcover, and that book is like, it was like,
yeah.
And I was thinking like I should have gotten the paperback. But anyway, so that's really the only thing that sometimes puts me off hardcovers is if it's a big, giant, thick book that I have to hold, and I'm weak and I can't like hold that book that long. But otherwise, I don't really care. I do prefer real books, and I like, the way they smell, and I like touching the pages and everything.
Yeah, and I think the last book I read in hardcover was the unabridged, The Stand.
I'm reminding you, take your medicine.
That was the unabridged Stand. That was a long time ago.
Yeah, so my kids were little and I'd read it every day at nap time as they were asleep because I wanted to escape mommyhood, and I figured what better than The Stand. I didn't know I'd actually lived through an actual pandemic later. But
well, I mean, it's like in The Stand, I think 99.9% of the population. I know that the
it was a lot.
They redid the series, right? Is on TV.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I think it was in The Stand. It was like 99.9% of the people died or whatever. Fortunately, we're not there yet. But yeah, it is a little The Stand likes right now. So
yeah,
because that was like a flu thing too, right? That everybody died from.
Yeah, like people just started getting sick and then like whoosh, gone.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have trouble with tunnels. After reading the scene where the guy crawled through the Lincoln Tunnel, I think it was the Lincoln Tunnel in New York.
Yeah, isn't that the beginning where all the cars are?
Yeah, like the rat crawled over his hand, and
yeah.
I don't do tunnels then.
My wife does not like tunnels either. So when we go to New York, she hates going in through the tunnel into the city. But
So, Angie, do you have any more questions?
Not that I can think of off the top of my head.
Oh, what's next?
The new book will be out June 29th, and it's called Kill All Your Darlings. And I love the cover. The cover looks great. You can see it on my Facebook page or whatever. And it's about a college professor who, a couple of years before the book starts, his favorite student disappears, and everybody believes that this student is dead. So the professor is trying to get tenure, and he has writer's block. So he has his student's manuscript that she wrote for her thesis, and he thinks she's dead. So he's like, I need to get tenure. So he gets the book published and passes it off under his own name. And then the day the book is published, he comes home, and who is sitting in his living room but the student who he thought was dead. And she's like, hey, dude, I saw you published my book. And then things get crazy from there.
Nice. And you said that comes out when?
June 29th.
June 29th.
June 29th. You can pre-order now. But it will be out on June 29th.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yes. Sounds very good. Can't wait to read that one.
Yeah.
Let's hope so. Yeah.
I think we might have July's book club book.
Nice.
I'll come back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No problem.
Cool.
nice. All right. Do you have anything else, Becky?
No, that's it. Thanks for picking the book. And
Thank you for joining us.
No
Yeah.
problem. No problem. And try to stay warm down there in South Carolina.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yes.
it was like 50 degrees today. It was horrible.
Oh, terrible.
I know,
50.
right?
Yeah. How did
I
you
couldn't-
survive?
It was tough. It was
Yeah.
tough.
Put on your parka.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for having me. I really do appreciate it.
Yes, thank you for joining
Yeah.
us.
Thanks for joining us.
This was
No
awesome.
problem.
And thanks
All
for
right.
writing awesome books.
Yes,
Well, I try. I try.
definitely.
Thanks for reading them. That's the most important
Yeah.
thing.
All right.
Okay. Well, have a good January
You
You too.
too.
and stay safe.
Yes.